My wife, Iris, sat on the couch next to me, holding the bowl of popcorn in her thin hands. On her other side, our little boy, Freddie, sat. He looked just like his mother, with the same dirty blonde hair and faraway eyes, like the eyes of a dreamer. The movie played across our flat-screen TV, some CGI comedy with talking penguins and llamas that could drive cars. It was some garbage from Disney I would never have watched in a million years. But Freddie liked it, so I suffered through it for him. We had turned off all the lights in the house for the movie. Only the TV's flickering colors illuminated the room, sending dancing shadows that flashed out behind us. Suddenly, outside the living room window, a bolt of lightning came down from the sky, splitting a tree in our front yard in two. Light flooded in through the window, as if the flash of a nuclear missile were ripping its way across the town. A crash rang out as the tree split down the middle, its massive branches tumbling down onto the lawn. I jumped as the ground shook. More lightning flashed nearby, hitting other houses and lawns on the street. "Damn, there wasn't supposed to be any storms," I said in surprise. The TV had gone black, and now we sat in darkness. For a long moment, I thought the power had gone out. Abruptly, it came back on with a roar of white noise and a flickering of static. The volume seemed to be increasing by itself, growing into a rushing cacophony like a waterfall. I saw Iris try to scream something, but I could only see her lips move. As suddenly as it all started, it stopped. The standard "Please stand by" screen with a rainbow of blocky colors behind it appeared. There was a clanging, ringing sound that emanated from the speakers, high-pitched and whining like tinnitus. Then text started appearing across the screen. At the same time, a deep, serious voice spoke in the background, like a radio announcer reporting on the death of a president. "This is the Demon Emergency Alert Broadcast System," the voice read grimly. "This is not a test. Level 5 activity has been reported in your area. Do not go outside. Close all blinds, shutters, and windows. Lock all doors and close any attached garages. Do not open your doors except to military or police personnel with the proper insignia. Even if someone appears to be in distress, do not open your door to investigate or try to interfere in any way. A temporary quarantine is in effect for your area. Military and police assistance is on the way. To ensure the greatest chances of survival during this time of crisis, please abide by the following rules. Rule 1. If blood begins to pour under your door, go to a higher floor immediately. Avoid physical contact with the blood at all costs. Rule 2. All legitimate military and police personnel will have a special insignia on their helmets and jackets, an eye contained in a double-thumbed fist. Only accompany them if they have this insignia. Otherwise, they are imposters. Rule 3. Avoid mirrors for the duration of the emergency. The voice cut out abruptly, slowing down in a mechanical whine. Static started flashing across the TV, covering the "Please stand by" message that had returned in blocky letters. At that moment, the lights went out. They came back on a couple seconds later, brightening and dimming, before the power failed again. This time, the electricity did not come back on. "What the fuck?" Iris whispered next to me, taking out her phone and shining the light across the dark living room. "That was pretty weird. Everything looks different outside, too. I was just outside an hour ago and the moon didn't look anything like that." She pointed. I got up, realizing she was right. The nighttime sky outside looked strange. I looked out the front window, seeing the moon was cast in a fluorescent orange light. The cloudless sky had a dark red glow to it, as if some kind of eerie smog had covered everything. I had seen similar things happen after massive forest fires in the past. "What happened, Dad?" Freddie asked in his small voice. "Where's the movie?" "I think we lost power, little man," I said, ruffling his hair in a nonchalant manner. I didn't really believe the emergency broadcast after all. I figured some teenager had hacked the TV station and decided to play a prank, or perhaps some disgruntled employee had done it on his last day as a kind of fuck you to the station. I had heard of similar things happening before. It was somewhat strange how the power had gone out and the sky had changed, but I felt sure that it could all be logically explained. Someone shrieked outside. I looked out onto the dark street, seeing the silhouette of someone running frantically down the middle of the street, zigzagging wildly. As the figure got closer, I realized it was a young woman. She looked like she was in her mid-20s. She wore a white shirt and khakis. Her clothes were soaked in streams of blood that made the fabric cling to her trembling body. I saw a vicious gash bitten into her left shoulder, a wound so deep that the white bone peeked out through the ragged patches of flesh. "Help me," she wailed, her eyes wild and panicked. "Why won't anyone help me?" She staggered and fell forward, crying and bleeding all over the road. I was about to run outside to see what was wrong with the young woman when I saw another silhouette creeping up behind her. It looked like the body of a man, but something was wrong. As he drew closer, I caught a glimpse of the man's face through the dim light. The left side of it was rotted and decayed, while the right looked muscular and healthy. He wore a black suit that looked like little more than tatters. Pieces of it fell off in ragged strips. I could see his left hand was also decomposing. Whatever kind of sickness it was, it seemed to extend to the whole left side of his body. The stiff, skeletal leg cracked as he dragged it behind him, silently drawing nearer to the young woman. The living side of his face split into an insane rictus grin as he looked down at her. He carried a blood-stained axe that dragged on the pavement behind him with a harsh, metallic groan. "Get away from me!" The woman screamed at the abomination, trying to kick at him. But she looked weakened from blood loss, and her attempts were feeble and slow. The man laughed, a sound that rang out like the gurgling of blood. He spat squirming maggots from his mouth onto the dark street below. He knelt down before the gasping woman and gave a low whisper. It carried on the dead, silent air. "So warm," he murmured, wiping his dead, putrefying fingers across the streams of blood that spurted from her left shoulder. He stuck an inhumanly long, pointed tongue out of his chattering lips and began to lick the blood off his hands. "But not enough. Not nearly enough." He stuck the bony, decaying fingers of his left hand into the wound and started pulling at the ragged wound. Blood bubbled out in increasing quantities, covering her body in its wet sheen. The woman jerked, her face turning pale and bloodless. She tried to kick at him, but he only laughed again, gurgling like a man with a slit throat. In horror, I watched him raise the axe above his head. It stood there for a long moment, trembling in his shaking hands like a guillotine blade. "Please don't," the woman pleaded as he grinned down at her. In a blur, he swung the axe down into her forehead. There was a wet cracking of bone and a ringing of metal. She sat there with her mouth open for what felt like a very long moment. Then, limply, she collapsed to the pavement. A dull thud echoed down the street as her skull smacked the pavement. Sickened, I closed the blinds on the window and turned away, realizing that Freddie and Iris had been standing right behind me the entire time, watching the horrific display. Freddie was crying quietly into his hands, while Iris looked pale, her green eyes wide and unbelieving. The woman exhaled one last time, a long, drawn-out death gasp, and then everything went silent. I felt sick and weak. Staggering, I put my hand out against the wall. A wave of nausea rose up my stomach. I ran towards the bathroom, shining the light from my cell phone to light the way. Iris started crying. I heard her frantically try to dial 911 over and over again. "Damn it, nothing's working," she cried. I stumbled into the bathroom and threw up all the popcorn and soda I had consumed that night into the toilet. Covered in sweat, I started wiping my face with toilet paper. I pushed myself up, glancing into the mirror. A cadaverous version of myself stood there, the dead face showing horror and surprise, just like my own. I saw the same high cheekbones, the same shaved head, but in the mirror image, maggots writhed and squirmed in the rancid flesh. I backpedaled into the wall, stuttering something incomprehensible. The reflected image did the same, his lipless mouth opening and closing with silent curses. He wore the same clothes as myself, a black t-shirt and blue jeans, but they were rotted and tattered, as if they had been dug out of a grave. "What the fuck?" I swore, raising my right hand experimentally. The mirror image did the same, matching every single movement perfectly. At that moment, Iris came running into the bathroom, her soft footsteps thudding gently against the marble floor. I jumped, turning to her. "There's someone outside the door," she whispered, her face pale. I glanced back at the reflection, seeing that the other version was no longer following my movements. "Watch out!" I cried, but it was too late. The skull-like face came forward in a blur. His arm shot out towards Iris. The surface of the mirror swirled as if it were made of water when his pale flesh made contact with it. The sharp points of bone of his fingers wrapped around Iris's neck. Stunned and silent, I watched in horror as he started dragging her into that other world. "Stop him!" she screamed. "God! Make him stop!" I ran forward, grabbing her legs as her head and chest was sucked through. There was a slight popping sound when her body entered the liquid-like surface. I tried to hold on with all of my strength, but whatever abomination was on the other side was strong, stronger than me. His iron grip yanked her out of my hands. "Dad?" Freddie asked, slinking into the bathroom. His eyes were wide and wild. He looked around, confused. "Where's Mom? Who's screaming?" I had to make a decision instantly, I knew. I could either stay with my son or try to get my wife back. I knew I couldn't just leave Iris, though. I felt mentally torn. I looked between him and the mirror, my heart quivering with anxiety. "Freddie, go wait in the living room," I said. "Hide behind the couch. Don't answer the door or say anything to anyone, no matter what. I'll be right back." I wasn't sure if I would or not. Before I turned to the mirror, I patted his head. "Remember the rules they read us on the TV?" He nodded, but he was only a 7-year-old boy. How much did he really understand? Hell, how much did I even understand? I hadn't followed the rules, and now Iris was kidnapped. I turned back to the mirror, seeing that I had no reflection now. There was no sign of Iris or the rotted corpse with my face either. Slowly, I walked forward, putting my trembling hand out towards its silvery surface. My fingers went through the mirror as if it were mere air, but I felt something freezing cold ripple around my skin. Pins and needles rushed up my arm. Taking a deep breath in, I pushed myself up on the counter and went all the way through. I fell forward onto the marble surface of the bathroom floor, putting my hands out to break the fall. As I glanced up, I realized how strange everything looked. The world here was in constant motion, as if a fog-like void shimmered over the world. The floor's surface danced with whirls of shadow. They felt as freezing cold as liquid nitrogen as they passed over my body. Shivering and hugging myself, I pushed myself up off the floor. The walls and ceilings, too, rippled in the same black currents. I glanced around, seeing the white bathtub filled to the brim with dark blood. It bubbled constantly, as if someone were drowning under its surface. Bloody handprints of all sizes smeared the sides of the tub. The smell of copper grew strong, mixing with the strange smell that emanated from the shadows, a pungent, chemical odor like ammonia. I passed by the mirror, seeing that here, too, I had no reflection. I felt like a vampire, staring into that blank emptiness. Feeling sick and disoriented, I stumbled forward, afraid to even breathe too loudly. I heard Iris crying and shrieking somewhere nearby. "No!" she wailed. "Please, stop!" Her voice seemed to be growing fainter and weaker, as if she were being dragged away by a tsunami. I peeked around the corner. Everything looked like nightmarish and strange. The living room looked much longer, stretching out for hundreds of feet. It had the same blue carpet and white walls as the one in my world, but now it was the size of a football stadium. The dark red couch had lengthened to an absurd size, stretching wide enough to fit 100 people in it. The TV loomed across the room like the screen of a movie theater. It flickered constantly, showing a cacophony of white noise and static interspersed with horrible images. Naked corpses with their throats sliced from ear to ear, burning bodies, people falling to their deaths from burning buildings. But none of that was what made an involuntary gasp of horror rise up my throat. It was the enormous spiderweb spanning the length of the ceiling, fluttering softly in the breeze. In the center of the symmetrical web, I saw Iris, covered in silky thread up to her neck. She was hanging horizontally facing down, her body parallel to the floor. She struggled against the webbing that bound her like steel chains. Her eyes bulged from her head as she stared fixedly at the cadaver approaching her. Crawling upside down towards Iris was the monstrous image of myself I had seen in the mirror, but he had transformed into something spidery and eldritch. He skittered along with 4 arms and 4 legs now. The emaciated limbs poked out of his tattered rags of clothes, forked and elongated, the skin pale and covered in purple sores and deep gashes. Iris continued to plead and shriek in horror as it drew near. The creature's chattering fangs and blackened gums approached her neck. At the penultimate moment, Iris saw me, peeking around the corner of the bathroom. I stood there, unsure of what to do. I thought of trying to scream out, to throw something at the creature. But then what? We would both die, and then who would be left alive to protect Freddy? I didn't know what to do. These thoughts passed through my head in the space of a single moment as we stared at each other. Her eyes shone with a moment of clarity, even as waves of mortal terror shook her body like a hurricane. "Save Freddy!" she screamed. "Run! Go, Jack!" The creature noticed her staring at me instantly. He curved his long neck and twisted his spidery limbs, clutching the thick strands of silk with his skeletal limbs. The creature turned to me. He had a face like a skull. His filmy eyes regarded me intently. Silver streams of saliva dripped from his mouth. He gave a wide, insane smile, then turned back to Iris, unhinging his jaw. The pale, dead skin tore with a wet ripping sound. The yellow, sharp points of teeth gleamed darkly in the currents of rippling shadow. I turned, sprinting back into the darkness of the bathroom as the crunching of bone and the shrieking of my wife followed me out. I had to repress an urge to vomit. With all of the speed I could muster, I staggered forward to the counter, where the mirror sat revealing the image of my house, an image that still lacked my reflection inside. Iris's pleas and screams rapidly weakened. I heard her choking and gasping. A few moments later, I heard a rapid skittering of many legs approaching the bathroom. I started to pull myself up on the counter to escape this hellish mirror world. Something creaked in the doorway behind me. I glanced back in fright, seeing the abomination with the 8 limbs creeping up behind me. He stood only a few feet away from me now. As my eyes met his white, dead ones, his cadaverous face split into a sickly grin. A wave of adrenaline shook my body. My vision turned white in the darkness. With a pounding heart, I pushed myself up and lunged through the mirror. The 8-limbed abomination with my rotting face gave an insane shriek. I felt a freezing cold hand wrap around my ankle and begin to drag me back. "No!" I shrieked, trying to kick blindly at the mirror creature's dead face. "I'll never go with you. Never!" I smashed my sneaker into his jaw. There was a shattering sound, as if a ceramic vase had been dropped. The chattering of sharp teeth and the shrieking cut off abruptly. Looking back, I saw the corpse's broken jaw hanging on by only a few shreds of tendons and muscle. The eyes went slack, and I felt the grip loosen for the briefest moment. I pushed myself forward and slid through the mirror. The freezing cold pins and needles sensation returned, running over my body like water. I collapsed head first onto the sink, rolling onto the floor with a jarring thud. The shrieking of the 8-limbed corpse continued behind me. I saw him trying to force his elongated body through the mirror. The long arms with their sharp fingers reached through, swiping wildly at the air. Before I could escape, one of them came through and cut 4 deep gashes into my chest. My shirt instantly became soaked in blood as a burning pain ran up my body. I heard someone pounding at the front door, but in the panic of the moment, I could barely think. As the rest of the cadaverous body tried to push his way through the mirror, I dragged myself out of the bathroom. I slammed the door shut, even as the sounds of breaking and shattering followed me out of the bathroom. Ignoring the pain radiating through my body, I ran over to the couch and began shoving it towards the door. The door shuddered in its frame. The house and the floor shook as the corpse threw his enormous body into the wood over and over again. Cracks spiderwebbed down the front of it, and I knew it wouldn't last more than a couple more seconds. "Freddy!" I screamed, looking around frantically. My heart dropped when I remembered I had told him to hide behind the couch. He was not here, not anywhere in the living room. "Freddy? Where the hell are you?" "Dad?" A voice responded from outside. It sounded like Freddy's voice, but it was eerie, as if his voice had gotten caught between stations on the radio. It sputtered with static. It fell and rose in an ear-splitting scream. "Dad, let me in, please. They're going to hurt me." I ran to the front door, looking outside, but I saw no sign of Freddy. The sky had changed, though. The moon had changed from orange to a dark red, the color of a burst blood blister. The rest of the sky was such a dark shade of crimson that it looked almost black. Around my feet, I felt something warm and wet. "Where are you?" I yelled. "I don't see..." At that moment, the bathroom door exploded outwards in a shower of nails and splinters, covering my face and body in the debris. The cadaverous face peeked around the corner, as if he were playing hide-and-seek rather than hunting and killing people. "Fuck!" I swore as I looked down, seeing blood streaming in from under the door. It covered my sneakers up to the tops of the soles as more and more flooded in. I ran for the stairs as the 8-limbed corpse skittered across the ceiling like a spider. He hung upside down, the jaw hanging askew on his putrefying skull, the filmy eyes flashing with bloodlust. I was already halfway up the stairs when the corpse jumped down into the lake of blood at the bottom of the stairs. With his elongated, twisted limbs, he began pulling himself towards the first step in a blur, covering his body in the thick, putrid blood that continuously poured in through the bottom of every door. But something was in the blood. I saw to my horror. I froze in place near the top of the stairs, watching the creature as he struggled to pull himself out of the blood, which was already at knee height and still rising. There were dark silhouettes slithering through the blood. I saw the head of a black snake peer out at the 8-limbed cadaver. The snake had no eyelids, and its eyes looked as red as the blood it lived in. It wrapped its muscular body around his torso, rising up towards the cadaver's face. The blood-red eyes met those dead, rotted ones of the corpse as they stared at each other. Then the eldritch snake lunged forward and bit off the corpse's face. Other snakes started to rise out of the surface, wrapping around his 4 legs and slithering up his back. The corpse wailed like a banshee, running blindly into the walls to try to smash the many snakes that suffocated and bit him from all sides. But this only seemed to heighten their hunger and bloodlust. The sound of shredding flesh and snapping bone followed me as I ran into Freddy's room and hid. His room was the only one without mirrors in it, I knew, and I wouldn't be making that mistake again. In the thick curtains of shadow, a small voice rang out, terrified and searching. "Dad, is that really you?" Freddy asked, hiding behind his chest of toys. I saw his small body, contorted and pale, his little head poked above the lid. "Freddy, you're alive!" I cried, running over and hugging him. Tears streamed down my face. "I thought you were outside. I heard you screaming out there." "I heard you and Mom yelling outside, too," Freddy whispered, his small body trembling as I held him. "I got scared and ran up here. I'm sorry, Dad. Where's Mom?" "It's okay. Thank God you did," I murmured, remembering the lake of blood downstairs and all those strange, black snakes. "Mom isn't coming, Freddy." He went silent then and didn't ask any more questions. A sick, heavy weight covered my heart. In the darkness, we hid and waited, though I knew not for what. The smell of copper and iron from all the blood downstairs had become overwhelming. After a few minutes of this, I took my phone out and shone it around experimentally. I saw a thin layer of blood streaming into the room, rising up the stairs like the waves of a tsunami. It covered the hallway's hardwood floor, a half-inch thick, deep already, and growing fast. Dark shapes slithered and writhed in it. Small waves pushed the lake of blood towards us, and within seconds, my shoes were submerged in it. "Dad?" Freddy asked in a panicked voice. "What's that? There's things inside of it." Without thinking, I picked Freddy up and held him above my body. "We need to get to the attic," I whispered to him, sprinting through the rising pool of blood with my son in my arms. "Don't be afraid, Freddy. We'll make it." I had nearly reached the hallway where the pull cord for the attic stairs hung when something wrapped around my feet. I went flying forwards, dropping Freddy in the pool of blood. He was submerged up to his waist instantly. His small body writhed in terror. "Help me! Help me!" he screamed, flailing his arms as black snakes circled him like hungry sharks. The one wrapping around my legs continued slithering up my body. A rising sense of horror and panic filled me. At that moment, I knew I was doomed. I only hoped I would see Iris again. Then I noticed spotlights turn on outside, filling the inside of the house with a radiance like the sun. All of the windows upstairs suddenly smashed inwards. A spotlight shone through the nearest of them, illuminating me and Freddy in our frantic struggles against the snakes. Men in SWAT gear crawled through the shattered windows. With their gas masks, their faces looked like insects with too many compound eyes. On their helmets and jackets, I saw a strange symbol, a double-fisted thumb holding a staring, lidless eye. Dozens of them streamed in, shooting the snakes that circled Freddy and me. As the one wrapping around its body slowly wound its way towards my face, one of the black-clad men came up behind it and shot it in the skull. The snake's body collapsed all around me, its muscles loosening in death. With relief washing over me, I ran to our saviors. "Get us out of here," I pleaded. "There's horrible things happening." The man nodded in his black military gear, his mask revealing nothing. "Follow me," he said dispassionately, starting towards the roof. "You two are the only survivors we've found so far. It truly is a miracle anyone's still alive." I could only agree silently. "This must be all over every news channel," I said. The masked man shook his head. "No one knows about this," he responded. "No one but you two and our group. The media won't say shit. They do what we tell them." I followed the men out onto the roof. Helicopters crisscrossed the skies, illuminating the houses and streets with many bright spotlights. As a helicopter slowly lowered itself down to take Freddy and me away from that pit of nightmares, dropping a rope for us to ascend, I glanced around my town one last time. Many of the houses were destroyed or burning, sending thick clouds of black smoke into the blood-red sky. Men in full SWAT gear zoomed around the blood flooding the streets in boats, the whirring of the motors echoing like angry hornets. Turning away, I followed Freddy into the helicopter and never returned. Iris is dead, and Freddy and I have seen enough horrors to scar us for 1,000 years. In my heart, I know it is my fault my wife died. I didn't follow the rules, and she paid the price. I will hear those dying, panicked screams until my final breath.